And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come ye, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. All right, we're doing Exodus 23. Oh, sorry, I cough. Oh, let's just turn off the mic. All right. Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Actually understood that this time. Neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. If thou meet thine enemy's ox, or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. If thou see the ass of him that hateth thee, lying under his burden, and wouldest forbear to help him, thou shalt surely help with him. Thou shalt not wrest judgment of the poor in his cause. The judgment of the poor, sorry. One moment. Thank you. Verse 7, keep thee far from a false matter, and the innocent and righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked. And thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise, and perverteth the words of the righteous. Also thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. And 6 years shalt thou sow thy land, and shalt gather in the fruits thereof. But the 7th year thou shalt let it rest, and lie still, that the poor of thy people may eat. And what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with thy vineyard, and with thy oliveyard. 6 days shalt thou do thy work, and on the 7th day shalt rest. I'm missing words. Thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and the son of thine handmaid, and the stranger may be refreshed. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month Abib. For in it thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Excuse me. In the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labor, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors of the field. 3 times a year, 3 times in the year, all thy males shall appear before the Lord God. Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning. The first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring unto the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. Behold, I send an angel before thee, to keep thee in the way, and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. If thou shalt indeed obey his voice, and and do all that I speak. Then I will be an enemy unto thine enemies, and an adversary unto thy adversaries. For mine angel shall go before thee, and bring thee unto the Amorites, and to the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Canaanites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. Thou shalt not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them, and quite break down their images. And ye shall serve the Lord your God, and he shall bless thy bread and thy water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of thee. There shall nothing cast their young, nor be barren in the land. The number of thy days will I fulfill. I will send my fear before thee, and will destroy all the people to whom thou shalt come. And I will make all thine enemies turn their backs unto thee. And I will send hornets before thee, which shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hivite from before thee. That is very ironic right now. I will not drive them out from before thee in 1 year, lest the land become desolate, and the beasts of the field multiply against thee. By little and little I will drive them out from before thee, until thou be increased and inherit the land. And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea, even to the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee. Very interesting passage. You notice all the conditions. If you do this, if you listen to me, I will be an enemy to your enemies. But if you, they will not dwell in your land unless they make you sin against me. And then, meaning through their gods and the other things that they could practice as their works. They said, thou shalt not do them. But notice, do all that I speak. The founder of Israel, modern Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was an atheist. So please don't compare that country to what's. Don't think that they have the right to just do whatever they want and take whatever they want. They've laid a snare for themselves mostly. I pray for them. You know, I thought it was interesting when he said he would send hornets. I was watching a report this morning about Israeli soldiers being attacked by hornets. You know, that I remember that's so ironic, because I literally watched that. It was just like, and then I come in and I did not pre-read that part of this passage. You know, we stopped before we got there because I thought we were going to talk about feasts, and we didn't even get into this chapter. Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Boy, what I could go into on this one. You know, again, as Christians, we don't look to the law to help us get to heaven or whatever you want. I don't usually like to use that terminology, to cause us to inherit life everlasting. The way I will inherit life everlasting is through faith in the blood of Jesus Christ and through his name. And faith in his name and that's it. There you go. And you go on much for that. You know, his grace and mercy is what saves me. Not any works which I can do. Not any works of righteousness. No amount of obedience is going to save me either. Not that I shouldn't be obedient, but my obedience is already made sure in Christ because his righteousness is imputed to me as the scriptures teach. We should be, but having that wonderful, blessed gift that frees us up from all concern and care, let us then go on to perfection. What else would you do? So we study the law to understand principles of right and wrong. It's a schoolmaster, helps you understand. You know, this should be pretty obvious, a right and wrong type thing. You know, making a false report, partnering up with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness, someone who lies, and people often do this because of money. Like all the doctors who went out and shilled for the pharmaceutical companies, boosting these untested treatments that they called the vaccines, though they were nothing like them, did they? And many of them received money to do this. And that would explain why their complete lack of seeking out the truth, but rather just pushing advertisements. And I began to see doctors in the modern world as being advertisements. Unless you're I don't mean necessarily your surgeon or your, the guy who's going to set your broken bone. I mean, they have a lot of good knowledge. But a lot of what they do is prescribing medications. And a lot of the medications they're taught to prescribe is due to the journals and all that. They're not actually looking after your health. They're selling you pills to deal with the health problems that have arisen from our lifestyle. We have all kinds of weird problems. The obesity epidemic is not an epidemic of people becoming more like gluttonous or less active. People in the 70s had television. They were as, this is actually something measurable since when it began, when it started skyrocketing. I can't talk today. And people just don't, because they don't fear God, they will just lie to get rich. All the people on the news are liars for hire. Liar for hire. That's just the sort of person that gets tossed in the fire, okay? Partnering up the wicked to do that. And here's another one. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Well, a bunch of people are going to do something, follow with the crowd. Go along with the crowd. And it may not, I like I said, we're just going to, and we're going to enforce, we're going to, even though some people knew the things they were asking were wrong in denying us our rights. You're right. This is like I feel about school shootings. Young people have died for decades and whatever. And what do we go out and fight for? To preserve our American way of life. That's what we're supposedly going out to fight for, to protect this country and the rights we have. And they died protecting those rights. And I think the same thing of when people get shot up at a school, they died, and my rights should not have to die with them, okay? The whole point is young people died to preserve our rights, not to throw them away for the sake of safety. Because it's not safe. Because there are people, once you have no rights, the people who are in charge, who have weapons and have not rights so much as privileges and think it's their right to tell you what to do and think, will do and make you do and think whatever they want, or they'll try to. And there are plenty of people that will just go along with it. They're cops who they know it's wrong, but they're just doing their job. Let me tell you, you may get away with it for a time in this world, but you go along with the crowd when you know it's wrong. It reminds me of that experiment I forget the number of, where they put people in a line and they'd show them these series of lines. Which one's longer than the others? And the person at the end was the only person actually part of the experiment. The other people were all planted there, and they were supposed to answer wrong. It was checking out peer pressure. And they all answered the wrong thing. And it was like a certain portion of people, I forgot, it was like 20%, they thought they were wrong. And so they answered like everybody else. I consider that a genuine error. Other people kind of knew it, but they didn't want to go against the crowd. And a small percentage just would be like, what is wrong with you guys? And give the right answer. And that's how you want to be in everything. And you can't do it without opening your eyes. People too often look to other people for cues to what to do. What should I be doing? I see this all the time when I go to wrestling tournaments. I'll see people line up for nothing. If you line up for nothing, you line up to walk into a gas chamber or off a cliff. You know what I mean? I mean, that's where your mindset is. And I get it. They're not in hyper-vigilant mode when you're going to something. But I'm like, I teach my kids to keep their eyes open all the time. Watch out for the multitude. That's like when Jesus was confronted with the woman taken in adultery. There was a multitude there ready to stone her. Even though that was, because they'll tell themselves, this is according to the law. Jesus thought mercy was a weightier matter. And, we don't know all the circumstances of that thing. I like to think it was just pure mercy. But, could have been extenuating circumstances. And where was the gentleman? That's what I'd like to know. All right. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. That sounds kind of weird. Remember, decline meant to we looked at that. But it's basically saying you're not going to speak in a cause to go out. You could just say go after, to follow after many, to decline to their ways, to corrupt yourself. after their ways. You are not to follow them or to speak in that cause, to rest after many, to wrest judgment. That's the position Paul was in when he was, like before the Lord revealed himself to him. He was all for the cause of the multitude that were doing evil. Resting judgment. He was going to go out and, because everything they did was wrong. Christ was the Messiah. They condemned him falsely. And then to go after followers was a corruption of justice. Let's look at the words real quick, though. I was curious. What does decline mean again? I mean, I know what it meant, but what is this word? Decline. And it probably I think it means literally to stretch out, spread out, extend, inclined, or bend. Yeah, that was the word we had before. And obviously, you're going to bend your way to their ways. You're going to turn your way, to turn after them would be a good, maybe a good translation. Or interpretation would be better. Translation, you'd be more literal. Hold on a second. And what was the other one? Oh, yeah. Rest, judgment. Nata. Oh. Wait a second. Let me say that again. Interesting. Decline and rest are the exact same word in Hebrew. If I was translating this, I would find a way to bring that out. Find a word that somehow, like you will not, well, like I said, you will not cause to decline after many. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to corrupt your ways after many, to corrupt, or something like that. I mean, because those are the same words. I'm sorry, I never brought it up. Oh, wrong screen, Paul. Here we go. Forget. Sometimes I'll bring it up and I'm looking at it, but I forgot I didn't get it up on the screen. But like the words decline and rest are this nata. And it is both of those, to stretch and bend out. So I said the best way to translate that, in my opinion, to give people mostly a sense of like what is the word saying, would be to use words that are more parallel there. This should be obvious. And it is obvious, I think, that it's wrong. But people, because they fear not God, but rather men, do follow after men, especially when they're more powerful, especially when there's lots of them, especially when there's money involved. We don't have, if you don't have the fear of God, all you have is what can I grab for myself? And people can deny it. So, I can be righteous without fearing God. It's like, not without pretending to. I mean, you like I said, it's not. You have to. Where are you deriving your righteous standards from? It doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't have to directly come from God. But you're going to look at the Bible. You're going to look at Christianity. You're going to look at the law. You're going to have some sort of sense of right and wrong. Because the thing is, this doesn't arise everywhere out of nothing. I remember watching a documentary. I think it was called "The End of the Spear." Was that the one? I think that was the one. It was about a missionary, went down to try to contact this Amazonian tribe, got killed. Then his son came after him and eventually converted the guy that killed his father, right? But in their society, they had no, the idea that murder was wrong. It was what you did. Kill them. They had no thought for it. The idea that it would just be, not that, they didn't think it was wrong. They would probably think it was wrong to kill maybe their friend or their, like that. Much like it says, Jesus said, the heathen do this. They love their own. But he said, love your enemies. And so does the law. No, it doesn't explicitly love, but it says in a practical way to love your enemies. And we'll get there in a minute. Well, it's right there, verse 4. You don't, when you meet someone who's your enemy or who you hate, it specifically tells you, we'll get to verse 3. Specifically, you got to help them out. When you meet your enemy's ass or ox going astray, surely bring it back to him again. Now, what about this countenance a poor man in his cause? Well, that means face him or oppose him. I mean, a poor man in his cause, you're not to be opposing them. The presumption being that it's a good cause, it has something to do with their poverty, or something like that, I believe. Not just like some poor guy trying to sue somebody because they're greedy, or something like that. But Right, they had real. I mean, the poverty in America. None of us is really poor, except those of us who are truly poor. I mean, right? I mean, like if you have a home and a car, you may think you have it hard. I know sometimes I do, but we have it pretty good. We have it pretty good. Everyone who lives in America, if you're a homeowner or even a renter, if you have a roof over your head, worldwide, I forgot what percentage we're in, but we're up in the top percents, top 10% maybe, or something like that, 20%. I don't know. We have it really good, and there's a lot of people who have it really bad. And I said it's hard when you're someone who is struggling to survive in a rich country, because you have to get, I mean, it's like if I was in another country, well, all this money I have, I'd be rich, but I'd be poor because I couldn't, I mean, like I wouldn't have the same opportunities. A lot of times in certain countries, the difference between rich and poor has to do with corruption. And a lot of times we help foster that corruption. We promote people who enrich themselves at the expense of their people in order to get a lucrative bargain for ourselves. Different countries, Western countries have exploited other countries like that for a long time. And I tell you, it's like they will the resentment isn't going to just go away. I mean, if we made peace, maybe it would. If we, it's a pity. We waste so much effort on killing people and spend so much money on it when otherwise we could be making the world a better place. And people talk about, oh, we need it for America. Honestly, we don't need that money for America because they just shouldn't have spent it, because they shouldn't have printed it up, because we need it in the sense of we need it back in our pockets, because that's where it came from. You can't, every time they're spending money, every time that happens, it's just you're paying for it at the grocery store, or maybe in your taxes. If you happen to be in the income level where you owe taxes. I haven't owed taxes, at least not income tax. I pay self-employment taxes. They never get out of that. Everybody pays their Social Security. And that's supposedly going in for my retirement or something, but they've already said that's not going to be there. So what am I paying it for? You know what I mean? It's not going to be there. That's all right. I knew that years ago. Knew that years ago. All right. So if you see an ass of him that hateth thee lying under his burden, and wouldest forbear to help, you don't want to help. Well, I don't want to help him. I see the animal struggling under the burden. I want to see that in another translation just to make sure I understand it properly. Maybe I should just look at the first couple ones in the NIV just for the sake of clarity. Do not spread false reports. Don't help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. That's weird. Well, whatever. However, let me see if they have a little different take on that first verse. But it does, whatever. I'm not sure what they mean by helping a guilty person. I suppose like witnessing against the innocent person so that the guilty person, yeah, I saw him take his ass or whatever. I don't know. Something like that. Okay, well, whatever. It's obvious. No, I should have said about, this would be like misinformation. The way to keep from spreading those things is it's not something that should be done from the top. It's something each individual has to do. The problem is from the top, they want falsehoods to be believed. They spread nothing but falsehoods. I wonder what it's going to be like when the country realizes that Ukraine was a complete loss and debacle. Can't talk. I do feel like I can't talk today, so I'm struggling. What are they going to do when they find out? How are the people going to react when they find out they've just been lied to? We've been told, they're winning. Oh, they're winning. It's a bunch of propaganda and false reports. Just like with COVID. Oh, it's really going to get you. It's really deadly. Within a few months, within the early days, by watching carefully and listening to sorting through reports, not from the lying sources, I knew that the danger was minimal for most people. For 99%, for people under a certain age, there was hardly any danger at all. The opposite being with the vaccine, which they portrayed as perfectly safe. Perfect. Oh, it's safe as you can be. Even though on their own website, the CDC, and I put it on my crawl, on my song about that concoction, they list the things: myocarditis, pericarditis, and they even list death. And they'll say, well, it's rare. Well, how rare? Is it as rare as people dying from the BS disease? Actually, it's less rare. You're more likely to get hurt. If you haven't figured that out yet. All right, falling down under its load. That's how they interpret it. If you see a donkey of someone who hates you falling down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help them with it. Someone who hates you. That's what I said about the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan helped a Jew who hated him. That's what it's supposed to mean. Who's your neighbor? The guy who hates you. It's in the law. They should know that. But who is my neighbor? That's the weasel's way of getting out of it. Oh, I don't have to help him because he's not really my neighbor. This makes it clear. Like I said, in the story, we as Gentiles might not quite understand the hatred they had for the Samaritans. Not, of course, all of them hated it, but it was a general feeling of ill will towards these people who were not worshiping their God right and kind of saw themselves as sort of Israelites in some cases, and they resented that because they took up the scriptures and they took up the things that the Jews had, but not with but under a different circumstance. All right, so let's go back. And then there you go. Do not deny justice to poor people in their lawsuits. Again, that's an interpretation. It's the correct interpretation. But it does rob you of having the understanding of what that means, how they express that idea in the original text. You're not getting a direct translation. Direct translations can be difficult to work with because they spoke a different language. And, like a lot of things from other languages, translating them directly does not always work because there's sometimes different idiomatic uses and stuff. Like a lot of things that we have in English. I got to start making a list some more so I can explain it a little better. But they'll make fun of it in movies, like when there's a foreigner and you'll say we sent him up the river. Things like that, like symphony. That's more slang though. That's same thing though. Like if there's slang, that can translate really weird in another language because they just be like up the river. What? Okay. If thou meet thy enemy's ox, okay, we did that. Thou shalt not rest the judgment. I got the wrong one then. What about verse 3? I want to see what the NIV said about that. I skipped that actually. I got it wrong according to them. They say it means showing favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. Yeah, well, you should always be. That's why I was saying is face, oppose. Okay, I got it wrong. Countenance. Interesting. They have it there as showing favoritism, like when it says let the Lord's let his face shine upon you, the blessing. That's like the idea of favor. The face often refers to favor. I should remember that. Okay, so there we go. I got it wrong. Sometimes I make mistakes. Oh, I do. So you shouldn't show favoritism to anyone, rich or poor. That justice should be just. That is always the message of the Lord. That's why I was sort of a little bit you shouldn't oppose the cause of the poor either, though, in a certain sense. As far as if their cause is just, that. To me, that's why I had to throw that in there because that would be the obvious thing. And sometimes you can be assumed that if you hear something like that and it sounds not quite right, that may be the reason. There's a presumption of justice in there. So you should not rest the judgment of the poor in his cause. That's going to be the same word, I believe, nata, as before. I'm just going to quickly check it without going back there with you. Perverteth the words of the righteous. Kalaf. Yeah, same word. Bend. Or spread out in some way. And, okay. Keep thee far from a false matter. I wonder what they mean by false matter. I'm going to use this a lot today, I guess. Have nothing to do with a false charge. Okay. I get it. So let's go. A false matter, and the innocent and the righteous slay thou not. Okay, yeah. For I will not justify the wicked. Should be obvious. So when I think of our society, multitudes of examples come into my mind. Obviously. But this is what people will be. The innocent and the righteous slay thou not. Keep thee far from a false matter. There's a lot of unjust things in the world, a lot of false charges, and then the innocent suffer. But the Lord takes note. He does not justify the wicked, and he will punish. The judgment will be set. The books will be opened, and they will answer for their works. Like I said, as a Christian, I know I cannot just do whatever I want. I cannot just go and do all sin and expect God to accept that as some sort of faithful person. There's a certain sort of spirit and attitude we take on through the Holy Spirit, that we love righteousness, we seek it out. We do not delight ourselves in these things. If we, I find it really disturbing the amount of gleefulness there is in the violence that's going on in our world. The trite sort of, this is what they get. This is war. Ooh, you're so clever. It's war. People get hurt. Ooh. It's war, is it? I understand that. I'm saying we should have peace. It's war. Yeah, no kidding. Little children get killed in war. That's right. That's why we should stop war. Should negotiate. When people say, what should they have done after October 7th? Well, after, I don't know, but they should have accepted the Oslo Accords instead of assassinating the guy who brought them to pass. And the guy in charge now actually incited that assassination for all intents and purposes. Not directly. Not that, I think you should have freedom of speech, even to the extent of calling people, saying what they do is traitorous. And of course, one should be careful about that, lest you provoke people to violence. I don't want to provoke anyone to violence. But people should act against the evil they see in the world in one way or the other. Speak up. And also, in the way, we are somewhat culpable. We're supposed to select our leaders. Though, I as one person can do very little to affect that outcome. It concerns me greatly because, like I said, the things they do, the sins they commit can come back and bite all of us. And we'll be like, well, we had nothing to do with it. Doesn't matter. In the midst of it, you can still prosper and be blessed of the Lord. But I'm glad my focus is getting right with the Lord, because I know bad things are coming. Even more bad things. Thou shalt take no gift. And it means a bribe. For the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. That's why I stopped taking donations. Every time I'd get a donation, it always made me feel bad. Because just a negative feeling. I just have a negative experience. A couple of times it came when I really needed it. And I was very thankful. I've always been very thankful. But at the same time, it fills me with this sense of, I don't want people to give me money because it makes me feel obligated to them. I don't like not that I will follow that. I will try to resist that and follow only the truth, right? But if imagine if someone's giving me a lot of money, some person, and then they say but hey, well, you were preaching the other day, man. I don't know about that. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, I don't know. I don't know that I wouldn't just continue to follow the Lord and say, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. If do what you feel is necessary." I even regret that they would have given me money, and then I would somehow disappoint them. I always feel like people should get their money's worth. If people give me money, they should get. There's a certain service they deserve. But it has a way of corrupting me. Or I know it could, I should say. That's why I avoid it, because I don't want to be corrupted. I want to speak the truth. I don't want to be blinded by someone's money. I don't want to be perverted, in my words to be perverted, because I don't want to say that because I know how so-and-so feels. I just want to serve the Lord and be only indebted to him. And I don't want to seek to create a larger ministry. I am not a pastor. A pastor is worthy of his hire because he has to look after his congregation. Even though I think pastors take too much on themselves, meaning that they become more like Moses than they are like a pastor. I'm not even sure what a pastor. I always thought of a pastor someone who's supposed to see to the needs of the church, as far as like in the Bible. Problem is, we took these titles up later. And it makes sense because it means shepherd. But there's very few times in the Bible where the term shepherd, at least in the New Testament, is used in a positive way, unless it's of the Lord. There's only like one or two other than the reference to the Lord. Because the people who guide us are often misleading us. And, cease ye from man whose breath it is in his nostrils, for where is he to be accounted of? We keep looking to man to lead us and to guide us, and man won't do it. And that's why if we want to lead and guide, we have to strip from ourselves those corrupting influences. The only way I should ever take money is if I'm really desperate, like I said, if I'm in prison or something, or like that. I don't even know if in prison I'd need money. Back then, they needed money in prison. If I go to prison, you'll never even know where I am. It doesn't, because I'm not going to prison for crime. I'd be going to prison for speech, and that means I'm just going to disappear. And you won't know where I am. And so there'll be no place to send the money. At least that's my opinion. So I don't want to we should not let our words be perverted. Now this is not absolute, because I have a New Testament understanding. I don't have to follow. There's always exceptions. Like Paul talked about, the sweet savor to the Lord. But it wasn't. There's what is this? He called it gifts, but it was genuinely for a lot of times for the service of the poor in other churches. And if it's being managed properly, good. Bribes are things given personally to you. Sometimes there's a necessity to give money for the poor and such things, and someone has to hold the bag, like Judas. But oftentimes, who wants to hold the bag? Often it's the one who's corrupt. Who wants to be in the politics? Oftentimes it's greedy people who want to take advantage of their position to enrich themselves. And that's what we have, a bunch of people who have enriched themselves. And who are probably, when I think about how they are just completely out of step with the will of the American people, it makes me think they're all compromised, which wouldn't surprise me because of the sexual perversion in our country. They probably all got stuff on almost all these guys. Except for you can kind of tell the ones that they don't have stuff on, because they're the ones who are trying to serve the people. So like I said, a system such as ours that is in this wise completely gone off the tracks. Yeah, I don't know. How is it ever going to, how do you repair such a thing? I used to think maybe we could, but now I'm tending to think events are going to intervene. Things beyond men's control are going to change the situation. Even though most of this is beyond man's control, of course, God's plan is unfolding. The wicked are doing their work just like they're supposed to, but woe to them to do it. Like I said, it's maybe all foreordained, but what part do you want to play in that unfolding plan? That's a question. Who am I in the midst of all of this? Am I going to run with the wicked? Am I going to run with the crowd? Follow a multitude to do evil? But like I said, I don't think it takes the mark of the beast doesn't have to be nothing special, man. Nothing at all. It could be a sticker. Literally, it doesn't have to be something tattooed, indelible. When you take it, it doesn't come off because the Lord is watching. It could be a removable sticker, but you wear that in public, forget it. You know what I mean? Well, I can just temporarily have a mark of the beast, right? I can just do it. It'll be okay. Christ forgives me. I still have faith. I thought we were going to be raptured. I mean, shoot, I got to eat. I have enough faith in God to starve to death before I'll do that. I will. I'm like, well, I'm dying, but I know the Lord will raise me up again. But I'm not, just like the 3 Hebrew children. Hey, whether or not we're going to get torched in that or God is going to save us, doesn't matter. We are not bowing to your statue. Period. Thou shalt not oppress a stranger. For you know the heart of a stranger. You know what it's like to be a stranger. You know what in your heart, how that feels. I don't. Well, I do. What am I talking about? Seeing you were strangers in the land of Egypt. When I came to the place where I live, I've discovered what it's like to be a stranger. But like I think I said the other day, I've always felt like a stranger, personally, but not quite like this. I mean, of course, not quite to the degree being like in a country where they don't speak your language, or something like that. But I know what it's like to be, to try to be part of a society and then have people not, they reject you, they don't like you, and feeling like, I got no friends here. I got no friends here. So when people, like when someone, like let's say you're part of something, church, or like I coach wrestling, right? Or you're a coach or involved in some sort of organization. When someone new comes along, be kind. Of course, you don't oppress them, but there's other things you can do in a positive sense, like try to be friendly to them. Befriend a stranger. Yes, thou shalt not oppress them. But, I would say almost like Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard it said of old time, thou shalt not oppress a stranger. But I say to you, be kind to the stranger. Befriend the stranger so that maybe, what do you know? He may hear the gospel. That would sort of come into Paul, really, because Jesus was not sent to strangers, even though he did go to a few, right? I am not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But at the same time, he healed them. He went and saw the Samaritans. He especially went and saw them. And like I said, that reminds me of the centurion Cornelius, who feared God and followed after righteousness, at least according to the light that was given him, that's someone who's ripe for the gospel. That's why Jesus went and preached in Samaria. So, again, people often have an inclination to dislike foreigners or strangers, and it's like, in our country, we're not so bad like that. Some people are very hostile. Like I said, I don't think, again, someone come lawfully is different than people coming criminally in to do crime. And if people want to come here to work, they should, we should make it so that we can get people if we genuinely want certain people in here, let's get them in here. Let's find a way to streamline the process so that they're not tempted to break our law. If we genuinely need this, which is questionable also. But in the world, all around the world, they're told it's wide open, anyone can get in, so they come. And the problem is, our country is going to collapse. We're spending money like drunken sailors. Everything's going to become insolvent, and all the printed money in the world is going to ultimately come back here and be worthless. There's a lot of people holding our dollars overseas and and they're rapidly trying to get out of the dollar. That's bad. We should want everyone to stay in the dollar, because as they get out, then they all come home. And then there's a surplus of dollar, a lot of dollars chasing not so many goods. And they want to have war with our, they take up adversarial positions with every country in the world. Like we could just do things ourselves to be more competitive instead of trying to hold everybody down. Oh, we got to crush them all so we can stay on top. That's not a very wise thing. Oppressing other countries. We don't, maybe not on a personal level. That's why I say a lot of times Americans, we on a personal level, we think we're so good. We're the good people. We're the good guys. We're wearing the white hat, right? That's not how the rest of the world sees us. And I'm more and more understanding how they see us, and a lot. It's not us maybe per se. They'll say things like, "We love Americans, we just don't like our government." It's not my government so much as the people running it, and not even that. Like, I don't even know that a lot of these things happen with there's no elected person controlling these things. 6 years shalt thou sow the land, and shalt gather the fruit thereof. But the 7th year thou shalt let it rest. That was the Sabbath of the land. Now, they didn't do this very often. This was in the law, but there are places in the prophets where it says you did not give the land its Sabbath. And, it's much like the prayer. Now, again, I do believe this is also practical in a merciful sense, and not just in the, like I said, not all. I said the other day that the command. Well, there's something else I wanted to retract. I said the other day. It'll come to me. Not retract, but correct maybe, or clarify. But the land, we know that the soil is supposed to rest. They discovered, like, you can't plant the same thing over and over again on the same plot of land. Like, I've got a garden, and I add compost to it, but I still move the crops around. I don't plant the tomatoes in the same place 2 years in a row, or God forbid 3 or 4 years in a row. You put them in the same spot, you get diseased plants. They don't grow well. Excuse me. There's certain things that don't grow on the same. You don't want to plant tomatoes or peppers in the same place. They're kind of all the nightshade family or whatever. You gotta move it and let it rest from that. And so in the Middle Ages they had crop rotation. They discovered where they would, just plant different things on the land. Now where I live, they plant nothing but corn because they add nitrogen to the soil. The soil quality is really garbage out there. I mean, you look at it, it's just denatured. I don't even know how it produces anything. It wouldn't if it weren't for the chemicals. It wouldn't produce much of anything if it weren't for the chemicals. On my garden plot, though, like I said, I had the compost. And I don't, like I said, I'm not worried about, am I fulfilling the, I don't worry about Sabbaths of days, and I don't worry about Sabbaths of years, because I'm not a farmer anyways. And this is good practical advice for them. What I was saying is that I don't think the laws are all pragmatic. That's an opinion anyways. But I do, like I said, a lot of it's arbitrary, like the clothing, meaning there's nothing really about the way you dress, like, like, oh, you got to have a tassel, you got to have this, the fringe on your garment that it will talk about later. They have these in the dietary restrictions. Though there's some evidence in the Bible that there was idea of clean and unclean animals going all the way back to Noah, right? Because he took of the clean animals more. So it's not just a legal thing. I was thinking about this, like in terms of this thing I talk about where I say that he relates to them in a way that they understand. I said, like, human beings make sacrifices to gods. And so God said, well, this is how you do your sacrifice. And you give them the meat. I don't know what you're sacrificing to. You're sacrificing looking for God to pay attention. And you're onto something there because it requires sacrifice. It requires, there's nothing that will pay for our sins but blood. And it's supposed to be your own. But thank God, Christ Jesus stepped into the gap and laid himself down for us. But the land needed to have rest, and they were commanded every 7 years to give it rest, that the poor of thy people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive yard. Meaning you were supposed to kind of like vineyards grow every year. You don't have to not plant them. They grow back. And same thing with olive trees. I've been seeing a lot of those lately. You ever notice, like when they're fighting over there in Israel, you'll see them in the olive trees. You can recognize it by the long leaves. I wish I could grow olives. 6 days. So anyways, so they were to give this, let the land go fallow. Stop trying to get rich off the land. Let it just be a year where it grows and let the poor come and eat it. That they should have abundance. And also they could maybe take and sell, I suppose. You were supposed to let the animals eat it and let the things eat it, I guess. The 7th year you were not to sow, though. It's in the vineyard and olive. Maybe it means you don't plant new ones. I'm not sure about that, about not harvesting it. I don't know. I know there was the rules about harvesting that you weren't supposed to like be too meticulous in harvesting. You just harvest and then let the gleanings, mean that there's always a little bit you don't get. Whenever you're done taking in the most of it, you leave that for the poor. And what they leave, the beast could have. I'm not quite clear on that. Do I want to look at the NIV? I kind of do. I want to see like if it says anything kind of, if that verse comes a little more clear with a interpretation. Let's see. But during the 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among you, people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat it. Well, maybe it'll allow them to sow on that land. I'm curious about it. No, the land is supposed to rest. Well, the thing is, if you don't go out and sow the land, a lot of times it will bring forth anyways, right? It'll just, whatever, because there's often, when you harvest, right, a lot of the seeds, because I get in my garden every year, I get tomatoes coming up from last year. I get pumpkins, cucumbers, whatever, because sometimes there's fruit that you miss and the seeds get sown naturally. And he's saying, let whatever grows up naturally. It doesn't have to be so intense. And if you're blessed, and when you say, well, what is the farmer going to do for that year? Well, if you obey the Lord, you'll have plenty. And you'll gather in enough for that year. Well, like I said, oftentimes, because of the hardness of men's hearts, they did not do this. Just like they didn't do the 7th year the slaves go free. Oh, no. What? The law says that? I didn't read that. Okay, going on. Again, then he reminds them of the Sabbath. 6 days shalt thou do your work, and the 7th day thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thy ass may rest, and your animals rest, and the son of your handmaid, your female slave, they also get rest. The stranger, let everyone be refreshed. Not that, because otherwise, like, they might be like, well, I got to have a Sabbath today, but you work. You're not a Jew. You don't have to keep the Sabbath. He said, no. And notice it's not that they have to keep. The stranger necessarily has to. Well, they're not to do work or servile labor on the Sabbath. Period. Within the confines of their governing place, but they are not covenantally obligated to be Sabbath keepers. Meaning that's not that, like, if they left the land, they wouldn't be expected by God to keep doing that, or because they're not part of the covenant. But while they're in there, they do. But the thing is, as Jesus said, that man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man. I mean, God rested so that man could rest. He rested from his labors, because it is good to rest from your labor. But part of that understanding is knowing that we rest from our works to take up God's works and to focus on the Holy Lord, to know him better, to rest in him. You know what I mean? Means to be like, I find rest when I meditate. When I get disturbed, I go maybe lay down and pray. And turn to the Lord in your trouble. Take rest from all your burdens. Ease your mind and seek the Lord. Now, when your life consists of maybe 14-hour days struggling to survive, the way oftentimes life is for people, that 6th day of rest is actually pretty critical as far as being able to just chill out for some time. Let the world just roll on. Anyways. And in all things that I've said unto you, be circumspect. I'm going to look at that. I've thought about it. I don't want to make too much of it or, overly interpret it to mean like, but I do think, even if this doesn't mean the way I sort of take it, let me see, circumspect. To keep watch or preserve. It means pretty much circumspect, without literally meaning circumspect. It means more like be. Actually, it means to be spect, right? To watch. But watch. Look. Have your eyes open. It means, when you talk about, there's a certain amount of, like, you can see things without actually perceiving them. They see, seeing not. Seeing, they see not. Hearing, they hear not. This means, like, see and really see. Don't just, and I'd say that goes to things like when we talk about the letter kills and the spirit makes alive. Don't just judge after the outward appearance, as the Lord Jesus said, but judge righteous judgment. You can't just like take, well, it says this. Like I said, it's like, as far as Israel's got to be in the land. Oh, that's what God wants. He gave them that land forever. I have a verse right here. There's a lot of ways they can possess that land forever. Remember, they didn't possess it for over 1,000 years. So obviously God doesn't think it's that big a deal if they're not there. Like I said, what does God want? Does he want a certain group of people on a particular parcel of land, or does he want people to obey him? You know, we have to understand what God's priorities are. I've read the book. I kind of know. I mean, we should all know these things, that God wants our obedience. And of them, you know, think about after what they did, not what they did, after what happened in the first century and what befell them ultimately, and their house was left to them desolate and burned. All right? They're going to just come back unbelieving, unfearing, and just do as they will on a God-fearing people who know not the truth, but who fear God, who have a lot more in common with the Samaritans. The Samaritans were more peaceful, though, right? But, I mean, like I'm saying, man, this is not Amalek. Don't compare them to Amalek. That is wrong. But they shouldn't worship their God either, which they do not. But they have a place for them. So, well, it makes them a second-class citizen. It's like, still a citizen. And in a lot of countries, they don't apply those rules, or they hadn't, or whatever. I don't know. Somehow they lived, you know, there were Jews in Iraq for a long time until the wars, they get cast out because of what they do, because of the existence of that nation state. There could be a peaceful nation there that encompasses Jews and Gentiles, Christians and Muslims. It used to be like that. I mean, they're under the Ottoman Empire, there was kind of a peaceful coexistence until war comes. Yeah, and you can become a victim and people will turn on you, and it's not a good situation. I don't want to live in those countries. But you got to make peace. You know, I think about, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Kingdom of Heaven, but it's like taking Jerusalem by force and keeping it against the other people of other religions that also feel a connection to that city. Whether you think that's legit or not, it don't matter. It's supposed to be the city of peace. All things I've said to you, be circumspect. Make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. You know, that it means that is a, that's not, I wouldn't take that literally, because obviously the prophet said, you sacrifice to Chiun and Molech. You know, sometimes that's what I mean. It's like, did they violate the law? No, because they're not taking up their God's name. Like, oh, Chiun, oh, Molech, please, Molech. You know, like that kind of, that's taking up their gods in your mouth. Making mention of their name. What will Molech think? You know, like that kind of thing. It's not like, thou shalt not worship Molech. This is all Molech. You know, you can say, the prophets do. So it's somewhat of a hyperbole if you take it too literally. No, it should not be heard out of your mouth. Not in that sense of you would just casually talk about other gods. You know, but once the people started worshiping the gods, the prophets came forth and took them up. Because it was the land was corrupted by reason of their worshiping other gods. Because in the worship of other gods, they took up the practices, the vile practices, the things for which God cast out the Amalekites and wanted all their images broken down for. It took a while to do that because, you know, just like Saul saw, oh, these are great cattle, man. I can't kill all these cattle. I'll keep it for a sacrifice to the Lord or something. And, oh, well, we'll preserve King Agag. I mean, goodness knows we don't want to get into killing kings because I'm a king. And I don't want to, you know, this. But they look at the images and they're beautiful images. Oh, so this is what the worshippers of Chiun are. Wow. You know, these images got, wow. What do you do on the altar? Wow, we don't do that on the altar. Whoa. Can I try that on the altar? Again, that's the problem, is they see those things and they're corrupted by them. They go after them. I said all the things in the world that tempt us to lust and to tempt us from obedience to Christ. They are like the sirens beckoning you to wreck yourself. 3 times, the siren song is a beautiful song. You hear it and you're like, oh, it sounds good. Oh, that would feel good. Why don't I go do that? And then you die. The soul that sins, it shall die. So 3 times a year shall keep unto me the feast, the 3 official feasts. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's the Passover, right? And then there's the feast, anyway, okay. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days as I commanded thee, in the time appointed in the month of Abib, for in it thou camest out of Egypt. None shall appear before me empty. Okay, and the Feast of Harvest, the first fruits of thy labor which thou hast sown in the field. And the Feast of Ingathering, which confuses me, right? Because harvest and ingathering, isn't that the same? No, it's different. It's one, the Feast of the Harvest, which I think is like before the harvest or at the outset of harvest, and then the ingathering after everything's been harvested is what it sounds like to me. Maybe there'll be a little tip or a hint, not a tip, a hint in the NIV. I can't talk today. The yearly feast, let's see. Unleavened bread, as I command thee, appointed in the month of Abib, cameth out of the Feast of Ingathering. Oh, I'm in the King James, Paul. Come on. Come on. Okay, do not... Festival of Unleavened Bread, Festival of Harvest, Festival of Ingathering. They call it the exact... It's translated pretty much the same. Okay, thanks, NIV. I was trying to figure out which one was Tabernacles. I don't know. One of those is, I believe, Tabernacles. It might be the Feast of Harvest. And I forgot what the last, or Booths as they call it. But I don't know. I don't remember what the other paying attention to the feast is one of those things I did not do very well. But there'll be more about that. A lot of this stuff he gets into a lot more detail later. So whatever. There are 3 feasts. I don't really worry about feasts, because once again, all that has been fulfilled in Christ. As a Gentile, I don't really have to, as long as I don't get into idol worshiping and drinking blood and stuff, I don't have to worry about the Jewish stuff, right? I don't. Not that I don't mean to mock it, of course, which I did a little bit, but I only in the sense that, like I said, the temptation, there's nothing wrong with keeping the feast. There's nothing wrong with having a little Passover meal or whatever. Celebrate Christ's resurrection. Although Passover is more celebrating his death. We have Good Friday, but, people dispute about these things. I don't get into feasts per se. I don't consider them a religious obligation. I celebrate Christmas, but I don't consider it some sort of religious sacred obligation. Though I'd like, though at that time of year we sing Christmas songs, and I know someone's gonna be like, "That isn't Jesus' birthday." It doesn't matter, because he had no beginning or ending. You can really celebrate. Yes, he did have a birth, but birthdays aren't really important. So, it's a day to celebrate Christ coming into the world. And that's all that's fine. But it doesn't carry with it some sort of obligation. As far as it is not a sacred obligation to do this, to be saved or to be a Christian. You could completely miss out on Christmas. One year we had a really bad one. We were froze out of our home. We had to flee our home before Christmas. Remember, that's when we lost our fish tank because the fish got too cold. The only thing left alive in the house was the bird. He was fine, though. Those monk parakeets are pretty hardy. Okay, so again, all the males had to appear before the Lord. And you will not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread. Again, the idea of being unleavened, he said, even as you are unleavened. The leaven, according to Jesus, was referred to the false doctrine, the doctrines of men. Let's just call it the doctrines and commandments of men. The things that men, and it's interesting, the things that men add on to what God has said that are not really that is not part of what his will and his truth really is. Like a good example of leaven is like the rapture doctrine. That's a good leavening agent. It puffs you up with information that not even true. You know, again, some people say, "What are you talking about?" You know, it's like, what? It's just the resurrection. The people being alive and caught up together unto the Lord. You will not precede the dead, any of the dead. So until the dead rise, there will be no rapture of the church. That's going to, and I think, and like I said, that leaven in being in people, especially in nominal believers, is going to be highly destructive to their faith. Highly destructive. When they start seeing the sun turning red and then black, and then, you know, the sun turning black as sackcloth of hair, and it's going to turn black, and that time I do not think is actually as far off as I thought, which we will get into again soon. But anyways, it's going to, when we have that leaven in us, because that's what that, you know, it's a principle of being uncorrupted, unpolluted by the doctrines and commandments of men. So you don't take a lot of the things I say, don't take them into you, especially things that sound, you know, if it sounds off or whatever, don't worry about my opinions. I said, don't get dogmatic about things that don't matter. When you take on these dogmas that have that add nothing to your faith or to your, you know, to your sanctification, you know, which is something I'm much more interested in. I mean, I want my faith to increase, but to me, that's not, I don't increase my faith by learning about what the angels did. I don't increase my faith by knowing who these people are, where they migrated from, and all, and the genealogies and stuff like that. I don't increase my faith by that. I increase it by learning to rely on the Lord and trusting in Him and believing in Him, in His words, in His truth. Of course, I have to come to understanding, because how am I going to be able to believe His truth if I don't understand what He said? And there's a lot of that. You know, there's things in the law that I'm going to struggle because I don't understand, and I'm not doing preparatory. I'm not going to go consult with scholars. Lest I come here and dogmatically give you, well, he said that, you know, dogmatically give you things and say, well, they say this is what it is. I want to take a naked, open impression of it. And that's what the study's for. And that's why it is unprepared and unread ahead of time. I prepared my whole life for this moment. So this is what we get. Neither shall be fat of thy sacrifice remain unto the morning. Idea, you know, that these things were to be completed and not left over to turn putrid or to rot or to anything. I think that's what it refers to. But because the sacrifice of the Lord is special and supposed to be separate from those things, kept pure. The first of the first fruits of the land shalt thou bring to the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. It just adds that there. It almost seems like it ought to be a different verse. And I'm going to probably break us right here at the angel, because that's interesting. We're over an hour, and I don't think I should push it to be super long, especially because I've been kind of struggling. I probably lost some listeners while I was going along. Not my best work. The first of my wife will say, thank you. Lovely, lovely lady. The first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not see this kid in his mother's milk, I think is an analogy of something cruel. You know, why would you do something like, let's take the mother's milk and boil the calf in it? It's like, you got to learn what a good idea sounds like and what something kind of wicked and perverse sounds like. You know, that I feel that way when I hear people talk about things like turduckens. We stuffed a chicken and a turkey in a duck, or a duck and a chicken. It's like, there's something gross about that. You know what I mean? Grotesque, perverse. There's the fact that kind of things are coming out in these days and ages. This is the sign of like the, you know, perverse nature. You know, eat with reverence. This was a living thing. You know, we're too separated from the death of the things we eat. I do feel that this is true. You know, I had a tremendously difficult time when I had to butcher a chicken. You know, you don't know what it's like until you actually kill it with your hands. Put your hand in their gut and bring out their warm entrails. You don't understand. And people eat so lightly. Not, understanding, thank you, God, for providing this to sustain me. And, I don't like that we have to kill animals to survive. It's not particularly something that I delight in. When I was young, I was maybe different. But as I get older, I have more empathy for not just people, but for animals too. It's not wrong. It's necessary, but it should be done humanely. And even after it's dead, there are things you can do that are inappropriate, like boiling a kid in its mother's milk. It's just, that's not a dish I want to eat. Okay. Like, what kind of mind is thinking, ooh, it was boiled in its own mother's milk? That sounds like something powerful and evil. That's the road that leads to human sacrifice and abuse of children. When you like such perversity, when such a perversity appeals to our mind, what a dark path we are treading. Like when they do such things. Now, some people now for the Jews, they won't eat a cheeseburger or put, and I don't feel the same about it. My wife kind of does. She doesn't like to mix cheese and meat. I don't usually put cheese on my cheeseburger. I don't know if I get it or not. I think my own brother would know I was doing a study right now. Okay, so I got to call him back, though, right after this. I just feel a little nervous when I get a call from my brother, because since we contacted each other all the time. Anyways, first of the first fruits of thy land shalt thou bring to the house of the Lord thy God. Okay, so we covered it. We should not be so perverse in our mind. I'm going to finish this study, and maybe tomorrow I'll be a little better. I don't know. Maybe there's something up. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. Remember, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come ye, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished.
Hey, Frank. How's it going?
Going all right. Dan just had the second week in a row projectile vomit.
Oh,
For some reason, he's like last Wednesday after he ate, I guess it was chili or whatever, he like shot it out in the middle of the night.
oh.
Went off, everybody was like a horrible mess, but he did it again. So I don't know.
Maybe you had too much lasagna.
Yeah.
Was it lasagna? That's funny because it always goes down so well for everyone here. I wonder what's up with his stomach. Maybe it's just too much.
It sucks. I just got him a new mattress.
Oh.
Like an air mattress and everything, and it's like on the bed.
Man.
It's like laying in it. It's like
Oh. You wanna maybe you got him cleaned up? Maybe I should have him over for a shower.
he's content to just lay in it.
No, I know. He knew yesterday he wasn't friggin'. He smelled a bit pissy yesterday. I went,
I meant to mention it to you. He's got to take a shower. He's absolutely got to take a shower. It's just like,
well, maybe I'll pick him up for just a shower today or something. Would you like that? I'm still streaming. That's funny. All right. So long, guys. My dad needs a shower.